what this webinar is. We are going to be talking about Six Sigma Essentials in 60 minutes, how to solve complex business problems, something that is going to be really helpful for a lot of people here who have also joined us on time. All right, so I can see some more introductions come in. Hi, Marcin from Poland. Hi, Prakash from Bangalore. Thank you for joining us. He's an industrial engineer with MBA. All right, that's amazing. Um, Good evening. I'm Harsha from Bangalore. Hi, Harsha. Thank you for joining. Olajuwon, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right, but thank you for joining us. Hi, Mercy from Chicago. Hi, Aditya. Hi, Miruj from Nepal. So, a great mix of audience from across the world joining us today. So, it's a very interesting webinar to be a part of. Before we begin, I think I would also like to introduce myself. I'm Shweta, and I'm representing Simplilearn. So, I'm going to be talking to you about this webinar with a wonderful speaker, Rex, about with whom I'm going to introduce him in a few slides. But we are joined by a wonderful speaker who's going to make this session really informative and engaging, right? So we also have like a few interactive segments planned for all of you. So I think it's time to dive right in into the webinar, and I can still see introductions come in this chat. So once again, thank you all for sharing your introductions. It's wonderful to meet all of you. Uh, so before we begin, I would also like to set some context. So we all deal with complex business problems, delays, quality issues, and a lot more. And that is exactly what we're going to address in today's webinar. And in the next 60 minutes, we're going to break down how Six Sigma provides a structured, data-driven approach to solving complex challenges with clarity and confidence. So we hope all of you are also as excited as we are. But before we begin, a few ground rules for today's webinar, as always. So if you have any questions, we request all of you to post them in the Q&A box and not in the chat, because if you share it in the chat, it's highly likely that we might miss out on your questions. So if your questions are shared in the Q&A box, we will surely take it up during the Q&A section, which is towards the end of the webinar. And please use the chat box effectively, and let's keep the conversations related to the topic. Please refrain from sharing any external links. If you want to have a conversation about Six Sigma, we are open to it, right? And for your certificate of participation, we will be launching a poll towards the end of the webinar. All you have to do is fill up your full name, and you will receive your certificate within 48 working hours. So these are just some of the ground rules, and we would love to have your attention entirely for the next 60 minutes to provide as much value as we can. And before we go ahead, could you tell us if you have joined our webinars before, with Simplilearn webinars before, or is this your first time? Because it's wonderful to know if people are coming back and attending webinars with us. So if it's your first time, you can definitely respond by first. You can type first in the chat, or if you have joined our sessions before, it's always wonderful to know that as well. Right. So Nandini is saying first. Okay, Harsha says first. I can see a lot of first. All right, so some are saying second time also. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. It's great to see a lot of people who have attended our previous webinars come back to us. And for everyone who is joining us for the very first time, I'll quickly introduce Simplilearn and what we do. I'm just going to take a minute to do this. So at Simplilearn, we help learners transform their lives by empowering them with digital skills, and we do this through courses. We have already helped over 8 million learners advance their careers across 150 plus countries, and we do this through global partnerships. And right now on the screen, you can see some of our university and industry partners as well, so like Google, Microsoft, Michigan University, IITM, Pravartak, and a lot more, right? And some key metrics that we wanted to highlight here. So most of our learners have reported a 50% salary hike on completing their courses with us, and we have also been rated 4.8 out of 5 by most of our learners. So this is something that we're really happy about, and our graduation rate is also 80%. This clearly talks about the kind of learning experience you can expect with Simplilearn and also through Simplilearn webinar. So we hope all of you get a lot of value through today's webinar as well. So that brings me to one of the most exciting parts of the webinar for me, which is introducing the guest speaker. And I'm very, very happy to introduce Rex Burdett, who's going to be our guest speaker for today's webinar. Let me quickly tell you a little bit about Rex. So Rex is someone who lives at the intersection of data, operations, and also real business impact. He has spent over 2 decades helping organizations move from reacting to problems to solving them systematically. And what I really appreciate about Rex's background is that it's not just about theory. He has worked across industries like healthcare, finance, automotive, and insurance. And he is going to bring in a lot of real world experience to this webinar as well. And he has led cross functional teams, partnered with executives, and helped organizations optimize performance using Lean Six Sigma and advanced analytics as well. So, when we talk about solving complex business problems today, we're learning from someone who has already done it repeatedly at great scale. So, Rex, we're really excited to learn a lot more from you. Thank you once again for joining us. So, it would be great if you could go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, hi. Rex Burdett, an IALP, International Association of Lean Practitioners, Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, have been for 20 years, ASQ Black Belt certified for 20 years, ASQ certified quality engineer. As what I said, I've worked in over 20 years in a variety of industries as a Master Black Belt, as a quality systems manager, as a systems improvement manager and in the last few years, working with the data, you find better ways to present it to your stakeholders within the company, and then that's driven the Power BI and the dashboards and Snowflake and that kind of thing. So it all kind of interrelates. But yes, I have 20 plus. I don't want to say how old I am, so I'll just say 20 plus years in working hands-on with this, and I do have a lot of experience and some real world problems that you'll run into. Now, and that's why I always try to share. My goal when teaching classes is to give people something that they can come back to their companies with, that their companies say, wow, I can see a difference in so and so after these classes. Not just the certificate. We all want the certificate for the recognition that it brings, but I want to be able to transfer to you real world acumen so that you can go in and make a difference and be recognized for that. So that's pretty much my summary. Sorry.
Thank you for sharing your introduction. I'm sure everyone's waiting to hear more from you now that they know more about you. But before we get into tools and techniques, I want to start with something a little more deeper. Most organizations today don't struggle because people are not working hard, but they kind of struggle because the same problems keep coming back. Like deadlines, they sometimes miss the deadlines, teams are busy, and if we are honest, a lot of companies are not suffering from a performance problem. They're suffering from a problem solving problem, if I may say. So, Rex, from your experience working with organizations across industries, what is the real cost of not fixing problems properly the first time? And why do so many teams fall into this cycle of rework and, firefighting?
They fall into the problem of problems. A lot of it, to be honest, is just people learn that that's the way it is, and they feel powerless, and they say, "I can't do anything about that. That's how it is." And that's one of the reasons why companies turn to these programs like Lean and Six Sigma, and they make them official, and they put the authority of the CEO and whatnot behind them, and they put structured programs in place so that you can use these tools to get improvements in your processes. And a lot of them, quite simply, are just poor process designs. And then that acceptance of things as, well, that's just the way they are. And then sometimes it's a matter of execution. I've had plenty of projects. It's a problem. People say, oh, I'm feeling this pain. They don't really know how to phrase it. So we teach in Lean Six Sigma, how the classes, how to frame your problems in the define phase. We'll go through that in a minute. And so how they define that problem, how they do that pain, and then also process execution. I've seen, as I was a quality systems auditor, and it was humorous, but not humorous. I would audit across shifts and across plants, and they would say, well, here we do it like this because it's better than that. No, everyone must do it the same way. If you don't have one process, then you're going to get variation. So just something as simple as that can be something can cause significance in the root causes. And like most of your costs in operations, it's like the iceberg diagram. I apologize, everyone. My camera is not working. I don't know why. I just picked today to take the day off. It was working yesterday, but it's not today. And it really is an iceberg. You see a part that's above the water and you think, well, that's a cost. But when you get into it, it's huge. And so putting in ways of manufacturing those costs and translating that cost to the management that has the power, leadership that has the power and the authority to fix is a huge aspect of putting together your Six Sigma projects with an impact.
Right. And with that, Rex, I think we have a mixed group of audience. I saw a few freshers introduce them as well. And I'm kind of assuming that a few of them are not really clear on what Lean Six Sigma is. And they might be wondering whether it's just another framework or something actually practical. So it would be great if you could just briefly explain what Sigma is and how they can effectively use it.
Sure. It originally started as two different things. Six Sigma, in its origins, if you go back and you Google or you AI, ChatGPT, whatever, you'll find that Six Sigma came out of Motorola, and the whole idea was having a robust design. The Six Sigma comes from a normal control chart, has three standard deviations, and we'll get into that later, between the mean and the spec. Whereas in a Six Sigma design, you'd have six standard deviations in there, and it really reduces your defect rate. Jack Welch, it was back in the 80s, made it very popular at General Electric, and he made it popular as a methodology for companies. Around even before that, Toyota was using their lean techniques. Taiichi Ono and the other leaders of the early Toyota days developed these principles to do things faster. They had limitations from their post-war environment, and so they had things that reduce inventory, improve cycle time, and it's all about eliminating waste. So you go in and you look at it, and you have your wastes, which are listed in an acronym: Tim Woods, transportation, inventory, motion, weighting. You learn all the wastes. You learn how to see them. You learn how to value stream map them, and you learn how to get rid of them. So they were going down two separate paths, and somewhere in the 2000s, they kind of merged together. Because if you're going to go in and do a process map, or you're going to do a value stream map, you want to use Six Sigma tools for those things that are appropriate. Those are those things where you really want to reduce variation and improve your ability to be able to get things done. And then in Lean, you're focusing on cycle time reduction. So you're focusing on speed, and you're focusing on improvement, and you're also focusing on defects. And that's probably where they most directly intersect. But most places now use a unified Lean and Six Sigma approach, which is called appropriately Lean Six Sigma. So that's really how it got started, and it's still in play today. Companies are using it to improve their business processes and to get that continuous improvement approach where sometimes you make incremental improvements, sometimes you make breakthrough improvements. Lean is more associated with incremental improvements. Six Sigma is more appropriated or more associated with breakthrough improvements because of the statistics involved. But both of them work together to give your company a return on these investments and working on these projects and training people.
Right. Thank you for actually differentiating between Lean and also Six Sigma. It would be great if you could also help us understand how Lean and Six Sigma work together. I know you briefly mentioned that just now, but why does this combination become so powerful in a real world business environments, and why should more people think about getting into this?
It's, as I said, it's very important. Every company, I shouldn't say every company, there are some that don't, but so many companies, they want improvements, but they don't know how. And telling people, oh, go improve things, that doesn't really work. So they empower people through these tools. And as I said, Lean, it's really focused on eliminating what they call waste. Value add is something that the customer is willing to pay for. Non-value add is something that the customer doesn't want to pay for. And that's the waste. That's how we define it as waste. So when you're going into a project, you're looking at it, one of the first things you're going to do is do a process map. And you're going to look at it and you're going to be able to see. The more you learn these tools, the more you learn about what a waste looks like, you'll be able to walk in and just immediately go, why is that person walking 200 yards to get more product? That kind of thing. It's as simple as that. You move the things closer. Just something that's, I've seen places move machines closer together to avoid the buildup of inventory. Very simplistic solutions, but it makes the process faster. And then at the same time, when you're doing that, you're collecting data and you start to see through your Six Sigma tools, hey, here's an example where we might be able to reduce variation. I'm looking at this data, I'm developing baselines. My variation is too high. That is the fundamental definition of Six Sigma is how wide your process variation is compared to how wide your specs are, which is the voice of your customer. My specs are 10, let's just say units, 10 units wide, and my process is 10 units wide. That's a capability of one. So if your process is 10 units wide, you need to reduce that variation down to about 5 units wide from your process, and you can fit it in there twice. That's an overly simplistic concept, but that's really what you're trying to do. So when you use lean to identify the wastes and you use Six Sigma at the same time to identify those things where you can reduce variation and make them more on target, the two together are very effective at making more money for the company and improving your processes. So I think that's the best way I could say that they work together.
Yes, you clearly explained the difference between Lean and Six Sigma and also how they complement each other. So thank you so much for that. And a major part of today's webinar is also about solving complex business problems. So Rex, can you walk us through a framework that professionals can probably use to help solve their problems and ensure that the solution actually sticks?
Sure. The most everything, I shouldn't say everything. Once again, there's always exceptions, but everyone uses this DMAIC. That's how it's pronounced. It's DMAIC, but people call it DMAIC in shorthand. Stands for define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. They use that in Lean. They use that in Six Sigma. They use that in Lean Six Sigma. And there are people that are purists that kind of lean towards one or the other, but they work best when they're done in conjunction. So in define, that's where we're identifying, the pain. We have a delayed shipping rate. There's usually a standard they're supposed to meet, or there's something around costs, or you'll see jumps in costs and things like that. So defining that pain is what you do in the define phase. You use as many specific numbers as you can. It should be 20 per hour. We're only getting 15 per hour. That's a gap of 5. So anyway, you put and it started on this date. All these dates and these times are very important when you're having your define cycle. So you want to get and we'll show later, a charter, a tool that says this is what the problem is. Here's who's going to address it. Here's what the scope is. Scope is I'm going to do it for this building or I'm going to do it for this department. Your scope can't always be open-ended. You'll never get anything done. So you have to define the scope. And so that's really what you do in define. Then you measure. That's where you measure your baselines to see where you are currently. Everything has a measure of central tendency and a measurement of its width. As I mentioned earlier, that width of that process voice, that voice of the process per the spec is where you define your Sigma capability. So collecting that measure on your background, validating your measurement systems to make sure they're good. Those are all statistical techniques that we'll use in the measure phase. Analyze, that's where a lot of the brainstorming really starts. And that's where you really start to appreciate your cross-functional team. You get a lot of input. And the more variety you have on that cross-functional team, sometimes they're called multidiscipline teams. You want people in there that know the process, but you also want people in there that don't know the process. People, a fresh set of eyes, people that could come in and say, why are you doing it like that? As I mentioned previously, a lot of the problems simply are people saying, well, this is how it is. And there you'll find someone who'll say, well, I tried to tell somebody about it 3 years ago and they didn't do anything. Well, this is your chance now as serving on a DMAIC team to say, and I think it's this. And this is where you start to identify root causes. And root causes are the X's. If you've ever heard of or you've done enough math, to know that Y equals F of X. This is what you're doing in the analyze phase. You're collecting X's and you're saying which one of these X's is most likely to be causing this Y. There may be more than one. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But there may be more than one, but you collect your X's here. The team votes. gives their input onto what the most important X's are, what ones have the biggest impact. You start to experiment with those, collect some data on those, and identify if you can see something statistically that's making a change there. Once you do that, then you also have brainstorming on, well, what's the best way to improve it? You're wanting to improve what's essentially the systemic root cause. Yes, an old example is the Titanic. Why did the Titanic sink? Most people will say, well, it hit an iceberg. Yeah, but it took on water first. Why did it take on water? Because the hull was breached. Why was the hull breached? Because it hit an iceberg. Why did they hit an iceberg? Then you start getting into a whole bunch of things about, well, the systems wasn't there. The man wasn't paying attention. There was too much fog. They were going too fast. So you see where you start to get a lot of different root causes, and the team has to do one at a time or more if you have the resources. But then you try and say, well, what can I do to improve that? And now again, you have brainstorming, you have diagrams that help you weight different factors. What's the most important? I want to reduce this defect. I want to reduce this cost. I want to improve this speed. So you weight those different factors against the solutions, and then you pick which ones you're going to implement because you can't implement everything all at once. It's just the costs and the resources usually aren't there. So you put those in place, you test them as it says, test and implement. You make sure that it's there through a statistical validation that you've improved, whether it's a two sample t-test, some kind of ANOVA, whatever. We'll get into all the tools later, but you show that there's a statistical difference, and then you put in things to control it. I'm a huge control chart person. So control is a lot about control charts. We've made this change. We know these values are important. We're going to control chart them. We're going to make sure that they stay stable. We have a predictable, like I said, measure of central tendency, a predictable range of variation. There are 8 different tests defined by Dr. Schuhart back in the 30s, one of the early pioneers in quality. And these tests go through and they'll tell you if something's out of control. People get that confused. When it's out of control, it simply means it's unpredictable. It simply means that the variation you're seeing is not within what you have normally seen. Being in control is tantamount to basically random variation, the normal distribution that the control charts are founded upon. And there's other types of charts that use different distributions, but the main ones use normality, and that is the quintessential distribution for random distribution. So if you have something that's non-random, there's a likelihood that something's going on. That's when you go to the line or go to wherever the issue is occurring and find out, are the people following the procedure? Yes or no? What's possibly going on there? And that's all part of the project work. So the control phase is very important. Usually there's a 30, 60, 90-day kind of chart where the practitioner and the team will work with the department where it is, and after 90 days they'll hand it back. But they still put those control charts in there. Control charts, documentation, audits to those documentation, all those things are very important for sustaining the gains that you got in the improve phase. And that's what you'll also use to control them to make sure that you don't roll backwards. I kind of liken it to, and I don't have a graphic in front of me, but rolling a wheel up a ramp. You roll the wheel up, you make a little improvement, you chock it with these controls, and then it doesn't roll back down the ramp. So you're able to solidify your gains by using these control tools. And it's very common. You use the same thing. I don't want to talk too much about it, but like in 5S, when you're doing, that's a lean concept of keeping the workplace clear and keeping things, people are able to see what's going on. Taiichi Ono called it removing the cobwebs so you can see it. And same type thing, they have a phase called sustain. And that's truthfully the hardest. That lasts the longest. And getting people from falling back into their old habits is a big thing. And so that's why control charts, documentation, and audits of those documentations in the control phase are a huge, huge part of the DMAIC process.
Right. Thank you for explaining the problem-solving framework with a lot of examples also that actually clarified a lot of concepts for the audience and me as well. One of the other things that we all could relate to is that we all sit in meetings and everyone agrees that there's a problem, but no one has a clear, structured way to break it down or solve this problem. So, Rex, could you walk us through some of the most powerful tools professionals can start using right away if they want to think about solving some of their most complex problems?
Sure. I've always been a data person. So anytime you can just bring even preliminary data, here's the Pareto, or maybe there's something as simple as a pie chart. 75% of our issues are coming out of this department, are coming from this particular process. So things that point to people, those are descriptive statistics in the sense that they show people what's going on. Data speaks volumes. It really does. When you're talking, especially, you have to, I don't want to say anything. Uh, when you're talking to leadership, you're talking to C-suite people and people that are presidents and senior vice presidents, you have to convince them. And sometimes if you're just going in there with words, it's hard to get them to understand. So as you can see here, they have four tools lined out. A SciPoc diagram, very easy to create. You can use a word template. You can download it today. It's the supplier. Who's your suppliers? You'll have multiple suppliers for any process. What are their inputs? What are they giving you? What's your process? What are your outputs? And what are you giving to your customers? So being able to define those and saying what those documents are and what those expectations are, being sure you clarify what the expectations are. That's a very powerful diagram to help people understand. Here's what we're getting today, and here's what we need. We need SPC per lot. We need something like that. So the SciPoc diagram really helps you think through your process from a very simple, who are our suppliers? What are they giving us? What are we doing as our process? And what's the output and what's the customers? And so that's a very powerful tool for showing people. And I know a lot of people, it's just human nature. We don't like to say, well, it might be us. So a lot of times, I have seen people point to suppliers and point to customers, and a lot of my design experiments and whatnot have been designed to verify those kind of things. So the SciPoc lays it out very simply for you. The five whys, that's been around forever. Um, it's very effective. In the previous example we talked about, you would ask why did the Titanic sink? Well, why did that happen? Why did that happen? And you keep getting down, and you usually get to a part where you start having multiple whys, like why did it hit the iceberg? You'll have multiples, so it'll start branching, and you'll have to start going down different branches. That's just that is unfortunately reality. Saying five whys in a single linear structure, that's possible, but you have to at least account for and expect that maybe there may be some branching, and that's fine. As long as you get down to some whys that are actionable, that's what you're looking for in the five why technique. And it's really popular because it's pretty straightforward and everyone can get it. So doing that five why assessment of a problem, why did that happen? And then getting deeper into the root causes of why it happened, that's where you'll really get the value. Number three, control charts. I mentioned that if you're monitoring this data over time and you suddenly, the worst of them is when you go outside the control limits. That means something has happened that's three standard deviations beyond where you normally are. That and your software will flag that for you, or you can do it old school and monitor it yourself. That's very effective too. But it'll show you something's not right, something's non-normal, something has happened probably. I say probably because there's always that chance. There's like a 97.5% accuracy on these, but there leaves about a 2% chance that you may have something that's a false positive. It makes you think you have something going on, which you don't, but those are pretty rare. So this control chart really shows you graphically, and it allows you to point to other people. And it's really important there that you tie it to the timeline. This went out of control at 2 p.m. on, February the 11th. Okay, so now you can go out there and say what happened. Well, maybe this guy took a break. Maybe we changed people out. Maybe we switched to a different supplier's lot during that time. There's any number of things. Anything you can tie to that timeline on the control chart will help you see and help you be able to explain or at least pursue what happened. And usually, it is some kind of a change that happened. Maybe somebody, decided they were going to violate procedure and run 100 psi instead of 75 psi. Whatever that change is, you can find control charts are fantastic for tying you a timeline to changes in the data, which is very important for your tracing down your root cause. And number four, the fishbone diagrams. I think we've all kind of seen something like it. Essentially, we have a problem, and then we start working backwards. Well, we have, like in this case, I'll just keep on using the Titanic thing. Ti Titanic sink. Well, what were the various things that could have contributed to that? And typically, you'll see they have people, process, equipment, materials, environment management. Yeah, that's yeah, man, machine, material, method, measurement, environment. Those are standards. There's other variations that specialize in people and process. There's a variety of them that you can use, and those are really, I think sometimes people get too hung up. You don't, it's not that important that you get the people ones and the people. The labels like that, those affinities, that highest level, that's to get you and the team thinking. What are the possible things that people could do to cause this? Not paying attention, not following procedure, not being there, all things like that. There's a whole lot more, believe me, on people things. But you want to focus on your process. As a matter of fact, I know in automotive, I've worked a lot with automotive. They have an IATF 16949 quality standard, and it will not allow them to use people as a root cause. You have to not use your people because that's too easy. I've seen places that have 8 corrective actions in a row where they say people. And if your people are causing a problem that often, you really have a larger management process with your people. And that's the one that you need to address. So the fishbone diagram breaks things up into affinities, and it's really a very great visual tool for your team to look at and say, I think it's this. Well, what about that? Well, that could be 2 different things, and you start breaking them down, and all of those become your X's, and those become, the things that you can actually test statistically with Six Sigma, and the things that your team can maybe say, well, you know what, we can do this. You don't always have to use big statistics. Some things are pretty straightforward, but usually in Six Sigma, we'll use statistics to validate this was a problem, this was an effect, and we made this change, and we have this noticeable improvement. And so those board diagrams across the top, those are things that you don't need. You don't need any tools for beyond um, Excel, maybe for control charts. That would help you, but you can use pieces of paper. I used pieces of paper for a long time. That's how old I am. So you can you can do it. And there's really there's a certain advantage to that. And when you're doing it by hand, and then you flip it over and you write down what went wrong and what you did to correct it, and that forms a record of what you did. And so it helps the people to understand what's going on. So these 4 tools, very important, very easy to use. The SIPOC about your suppliers, that pretty much defines your whole process. The 5 whys, a great tool for trying to get down deeper into what happened that you can take action on, and control charts for monitoring the stability, and fishbone diagrams for helping people to visualize. They have a real success story here at the bottom. They had an IT support team. They were using control charts to track software bug rates across their sprints. They were using the agile sprint methodology. And so they identified patterns when the defects spiked. And by identifying those patterns and taking action against it, they were able to reduce their bugs by 40% in just 3 months. And that saved hundreds of hours of developer hours, hundreds of developer hours, which of course is money. So that's the kind of thing that your company really is looking for. And they just did it simply by tracking what it was. And I said out of control, there's 8 different tests, and you'll be able to see what these patterns look like. And you'll be able to see, hey, from the data, this may not be a spike. It may be something cyclical. It may be seasonal. So they said there, they identified them when the defect spiked, and they were able to take action immediately and reduce those bugs. So very powerful tools, and very real success stories. There's books on how you use SPC to improve your processes. But yeah, these are 4 great tools, Sweat.
Right. Thank you for actually sharing such great insights on all the tools that are there on the screen. And those were some amazing tips also that you shared with the audience. So I'm sure they benefited a lot from this. So now we have talked about the method, we spoke about the tools, and the real question that we have right now is Lean Six Sigma just for factories and production lines, or is it something every industry can actually use? Because whether you are in healthcare, IT, banking, HR, operations, or any of the other industries as well, you are obviously dealing with delays, rework, and a lot of errors sometimes. So, Rex, can you help us understand how the same thinking applies across completely different industries as well, and how people can use them?
Yeah, absolutely. It started in manufacturing. That is true. Um, I've used it a lot. In manufacturing, you have physically tangible defects, the scrap and rework that you can look at. It stabilizes your quality and your input and helps you to focus on that variation. We talked about that. That's hugely important from a Six Sigma standpoint. I've been using it a lot in healthcare. They have issues like people missing appointments, being able to they're trying to use apps now and a lot of schedule yourself appointments, but then the apps have problems with the rooms not being available. There's test delays where they send things off. That affects healthcare. Waiting room times, people waiting, the ER is full, but they're waiting to go admitted to a care. I actually had a personal experience with that just a couple of weeks ago. My wife has some health issues, and I took her in, and the doctor said go to ER. We went to ER, and you spend 4 or 5 hours in ER because they're running a test to make sure the potassium wasn't too high. Why did it take that long? It was literally right there in the hospital, right next to each other. And so things like that. And that's when you would go in and use your Lean and your Six Sigma tools and say, well, what's the problem here? Why? Let me map this out. What are you doing here? Well, they did a handoff procedure to somebody else, and there was some, I can't remember the word for it, but they were basically hematolizing the blood while it was waiting. So there's time factors that can be sensitive. So you have to cut out all that non-value added time to improve that throughput and that speed, and that'll help you reduce your wait times. It'll help you. In our case, it ended up giving a very different result when they tested it the second time, but that improves your care and it focuses on the consistency in your high risk processes. Having high potassium is very bad for you. It can cause you to have a heart attack. So they want to have consistency in that and make sure the high risk processes um, are stable and that they give valid results. So absolutely, the tools of Six Sigma and Lean work in healthcare. I've used them. A lot of times, it does end up being something that's passed up to the C-suite, CEOs, COOs, and stuff like that. And they like to see their stuff in dashboards, and they like to see it in red and green. But all of the all of the underlying work has to be done for that. You can't just pass up data. You have to create that data stream, and you have to create that data substructure. So that's all done in Lean and healthcare, and excuse me, Lean and Six Sigma for healthcare. It's the same in IT and services. I've worked a lot with IT. They have to have these. You see that SLA, that's service level agreement. They agree to have this product done in a week or two, maybe something like that. I noticed recently I had service level agreements in healthcare where if something was a critical healthcare, like oxygen for someone being dismissed or being discharged from a hospital, it had to be delivered in 2 hours. That kind of thing. Other stuff could be 9 o'clock the next day. So you have these service level agreements defined, and usually they're around time and what you're going to provide. So in IT, you are able to meet those service level agreements and improve turnaround time. It's all about, well, I say it's all about time, and it definitely is, but it's also about consistency. It's not sloppy time. It's time reduced to the value add, and then also maintaining that consistency. Um, there are a lot of handoff issues in IT. One developer hands it to another developer, somebody else inherits somebody's spaghetti code. They spend a lot of time trying to figure it out. They go back to the original requester to request clarifications on definitions and what it is they really want. There are a lot of handoffs in IT. So putting that structure, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, sorry. Putting that structure to support that delivery and increase that speed, and very importantly, improve that consistency. And so you don't have to do rework. I mean, if an IT group produces a product, let's say they do in a sprint, and it doesn't meet their stakeholder that requested its needs, they have to go back and do it again. And a lot of time that's because they didn't get the definitions correct in the define phase. So that's the kind of stuff that has an impact on IT and services. Same thing in banking. If you want to speed up your approvals, a lot of things, what I see here, um, it's authorization. I know I worked with customer service and it was probably about a 2 week response time, because if someone would call in and say, I need this, and it's $100,000, that would be above the approval level of the first person they were talking to. So they would have to elevate it to somebody else, and they would have to elevate it to somebody else. And so you ended up with a 2 week time. We defined times. We put visual display boards in the customer service office so they could see which were the oldest requests. They could see the timing. They would code red after a certain amount of time, and it let everybody focus on those. And we got it down from 2 weeks down to 2 days. So that's a huge improvement to your customers. And your customers, very important. I don't know if you've seen the marketing data on it, but it costs 4 times as much to get a new customer as it does to keep an existing customer. So you want to make your existing customers happy. And so making them have less waiting, a smoother workflow, getting the stuff right, all of this stuff. It's all these principles apply that define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. That's the basic framework. You go through those steps. Sometimes people get caught up and they say, well, I'm going to analyze, but I need to do something that seems like it's more defined. That's okay. You go back and use that tool. You can use the tools wherever you want. And the more you become an expert with these tools and with these methodologies, the more you'll realize that I can use whatever tool I want in any phase I'm in. But overall, your company will probably have toll gates to say, yes, you're finished with the defined phase. You're ready to move on to measure. You're ready to move on to analyze and that kind of thing. So there's a structured toll gate that moves you on to the next phase, but you have the ability to use whatever tool you want. And that is a direct result of your expertise, what you know. And that's what we want to teach you in this class is that kind of expertise so that you know what tool to use and that you know how well to use it. So that when people, this is the other part of it, trust and credibility. The more you demonstrate mastering and expertise in these tools, the more credibility you'll have. One of the things I've talked to in my black belt and green belt classes is you may have heard the term designed experiment. That takes a lot of time and money. And if you walk in and say, I want to do a design experiment, and everyone knows it's going to take 3 weeks of floor time or whatever it is, they're not going to just say, sure, go ahead and do it. You have to justify it to them. So the more you build up your credibility and you walk in there and say, I need to do this because of this, the better your chances are. I hate to say it, but from a political standpoint, the better your chances are of getting that done. So anyway, it does apply in banking and it definitely applies in all HR and corporate functions. I mean, I said little personal experience there with the delays and in corporate hiring procedures. Why does it take 3 months to get somebody through there? I've had people take 3 months to go from application to final offer. That's unnecessary, and usually it is the same type thing. It's a handoff. It's an authorization thing. They want to get consensus from multiple people. So you take the same thing. It's all about documenting your work processes, auditing them to make sure that people are following them, and then also using statistics to see if changes that the team comes up with makes a difference. So it definitely applies to all of these, and I've used it in all of these, and it definitely has a positive result, and people recognize it for what it is.
Right. That was great. Actually, you explained how Lean Six Sigma is used across industries, and like we all know, there are problems that need to be solved everywhere. So it has a lot of potential and scope, especially when it comes to solving problems. Also, we have a few members who are participants who are interested in this certification. So, what are some of the roles and opportunities a Lean Six Sigma expert can look into?
It depends on the company. A lot of companies will have a set uh, continuous improvement OpEx. They call it OpEx a lot. It goes by multiple names. Sometimes it's Six Sigma, sometimes it's Lean. Usually it goes under the name in a company of continuous improvement, quality improvement, process improvement, or OpEx. All of these things, when you have this certification, that immediately identifies to them. They say this person knows and they have demonstrated and they have a certificate that shows they have. So they'll automatically move you to the top of the list of people who want these roles. And it may be something considered an entry level role like process analyst. My very first job was process analyst. I think it was called lab technician. I went around the factory floor and collected fluid levels from people who were spraying fluids, the prescribed level is 450, I'd stop and I'd check and I'd say, hey, you're at 600. Why? And then make them turn back down. So tracking those levels, checking the specific gravity of solutions that were being used, the line speeds, all that stuff. That's all process analyst, quality analyst stuff. And usually that is a good starting point because you learn the business, you learn what's right, you learn to talk to the people that are doing the work, you get the relationships going, and then you're able to see what's going on there. Same thing with supply chain. It's a huge, huge opportunity. Supply chains have become critical. We saw that especially with COVID. So supply chain analysts, a huge demand for that, and then huge demand in healthcare. I mean, I think we all understand intuitively, healthcare is just going to grow as our population ages. It's not going to shrink. So from there, depending on your proficiency and what opportunities available, you're able to move up more into process improvement. You'll start to see terms in here like manager, operations manager, quality manager. So these titles of these certifications that you get, they qualify you for the entry level roles. They also, depending on the company, might bring you in at a mid-level role. And if you have enough hours and you have enough experience and enough in your portfolio to demonstrate a mastery of the subject, you can come in at a fairly senior level role with these certificates. A lot of the searches are based on, they'll say that in the requirements. I need someone who's a black belt. I need someone who's a master black belt. They'll say that. So these certificates have a very direct correlation with what companies are working on from a job description search, and then they also have it from your ability to come in and get a seat at the table during an interview. So they're very, very valuable. I've had mine for 20 years, and I've gotten a lot of benefit from it. And again, it's the certificate, but I think even more importantly, the certificate does open the door. But just like an interview and a resume, the resume opens the door, the certificate opens the door, but then it's you and your mastery of the subject and your ability to say, yes, I did this here, I did this like this, I made this X% improvement, we reduced defects, we improved wait times, all those things. That comes from your expertise of these tools, and that's what we want you to learn in this class. It's that expertise. So that takes the effort from you. We'll provide you the tools, but you have to put the effort into it. It's like that's how education works. Yeah, you can go to class, but you have to actually apply it and learn it to become an expert at it. And then, yeah, these roles and these opportunities, they are everywhere. Every company has problems. Every company is looking for ways to improve costs. They do it in different ways. Some people don't have these kind of programs where they work and they just want to have these certificates. It will open doors for you. I can guarantee you. Firsthand, it will open doors for you. So getting the certificate is a hugely beneficial thing for your career, whether your company currently does it or whether you want to get another company, or even if you wanted to go out as a freelance person, you could do that, I suppose. There's a lot of freelance business analysts and BI people and stuff like that. Same thing here. If you have a mastery of it and you have a portfolio, it will definitely open doors for you.
Right. Thank you so much for talking about the roles and opportunities out there. So we know that this field is growing. There are always going to be more roles coming up, and this is a field that you can definitely, learn more about and get into because, like Rex just mentioned, there are going to be problems, and they're going to need people to solve these problems. That also brings me to something that most of our audience have been waiting for. So when you signed up for the webinar, you might have seen that we have an interactive segment planned for all of you. So this is going to be about finding the root cause. So it's an interactive problem solving challenge, and Rex is gonna take you through that. So I'll just briefly tell you how the challenge works. So there are going to be different scenarios that are going to be shared with you, and you will be given options. So you will have to analyze the root cause according to you. You can select the answer and let us know in the chat. And then Rex is going to basically help you understand what the right option is and why that makes more sense, right? So with that, I think Rex, I'm gonna hand it over to you. You can definitely go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Sweat. It's we start with assembly line defects. Like I said, Six Sigma and Lean both had their origins in manufacturing, and sometimes it's easily understood in terms of manufacturing, more easily, I should say. So in this one, they have a medical device manufacturer experiences a 23% increase in product defects over 3 months. that's going to show up in their control charts or in their reports, and that's going to get attention. Why do we have a 23% increase? Quality inspectors, these are very important that you look at all of the words when your team is looking and forming your charter. These are pieces of information that are critical. So the quality inspectors catch most issues. So you've had a defect, you're experiencing a 23% increase. The quality inspectors are catching them. That means that they're not getting out into the field. So that's why it says rework costs surged by 340,000. You're catching them internally, but it's costing you 340,000, and that comes directly off your profit line. You have to pay that 340,000 comes right off your bottom line. The production speed has remained constant, and the same materials are used. That's a very frequent question. Did we change materials? Did we change suppliers? So they give four possible root causes here, and to be honest, all of these are potential root causes. So at this stage, we're going to go through the logic that your team uses to try and ascertain which one of these are the most likely. So one possible one is the inspectors are becoming more thorough. Another one is that the recent turnover in assembly staff, 50% are new. C is equipment calibration hasn't been updated in 18 months. And D is that the suppliers changed packaging, causing handling issues. So if you all would in the chat, I see a lot of C's, a B, C, or D. Yeah, so I mean, I could make an argument for any one of these, but I'm seeing a lot of C's, some D's, and some A's. Okay. So that's very good. Thank you. Anybody else want to get one in before we reveal the right answer? Okay. Okay. Yeah, if you would go to the next slide, please. Right. So the best answer is C. Equipment calibration drift is the true culprit. Gradual deviations from specifications it compounds over time. I know that in automotive, there's a requirement to have control charts on your calibrations. So you would see this kind of thing in your timeline study. Uh, you might ask yourself, why not the others? Well, the thought was, and this again, this is your team, the inspector thoroughness would show earlier detection patterns. So you wouldn't see it suddenly. If you had inspection problems and the inspector's getting thorough, it wouldn't be a sudden jump. It would be earlier detection. New hires, they would also create obvious skill-based errors that would show up in the Pareto charts and also in the control charts. And then packaging changes would affect specific components. If you had only these packaging changes, they would only be these performance. I will say here, yeah, because all four of them were at least reasonable. This is what your team came up with. C, that's the one you're going to look at first. You can look at the others as well if you have the time and you have the resources. But this is just the way of how we would use the logic from the multidiscipline team. And we would say, here's what we think it is. It's the calibration drift. So our strategy from a Lean Six Sigma is we want to implement preventive maintenance schedules. All companies need to have preventive maintenance schedules. We use the DMAIC. We create control charts for calibration, the metrics. I just mentioned that being a requirement in automotive. We want to establish statistical control charts, SPC limits. And then for long term, we want to deploy total productive maintenance. Total productive maintenance is an entire program that you can get certified to. There's a school of total productive maintenance in Japan. Ultimately, its ultimate goal is to have autonomous maintenance protocols where the operators know what to do and they do that. Kind of a hybrid in between there is those preventive maintenance documents that exist at the machine and that the operator does. When he goes to use it, he checks out the preventive maintenance. He does whatever he needs to do before he uses it that day, and he checks it off. So that's our long-term solution is to implement productive maintenance and to have those autonomous checks. Could you argue that it was one of the other ones? Yes. And that's where you would probably get into some data tools. If you want to see if it's one versus the other, you're going to use a t-test. If you're going to look at 1, 3 or more, you're going to use ANOVA. A lot of these tests there's decision trees that tell you it's this, it's um, uh, I can't get my words out of my mouth. Yeah, it's continuous data or it's attribute data, good, bad, that kind of thing. That defines what tests you use. Maybe you're using a chi-squared test because it's attribute data. And so how you organize your data then becomes part of your mastery of the tools. And you could go back and use statistics to verify which one of these was the best. In this case, based on the logic described, the team chose C. And that's what you would pursue first as far as trying improvements on. Everybody okay with that? Yeah, I see someone say, "Well, could we argue about it?" Yeah, absolutely. You will argue about it. Your team will never be unanimous, and there will be someone that will have this. I myself, I have this, and yeah, I see new hires in assembly hardly ever have high skills. That is so true. Matter of fact, the corrective action I mentioned, where the people did it 8 times in a row with people, that was their excuse. They used a new guy, and it's like, well, why do you keep using new people that don't know what they're doing in the process? This was the testing process. What are you doing? So it's really a company issue. But yes, there's absolutely, we could argue about some of these, and that's where the statistics really come into play. I want to look at this. I want to look at data on this versus that. But for the purposes of this webinar, and we're limited on time here. I see I'm talking too much. Root cause C was the one the team identified. If you could go to the next slide, please. Okay, here's one direct healthcare application. An ER sees an average wait time jump from 45 to 92 minutes. That's quite a lot. Patients complain, increases 60%. Staff levels have been adequate, and patient volume is only up 8%. Bed availability shows no significant change. What's the root cause? Seasonal flu outbreak, increasing the patients. New electronic health record system slows documentation, which is kind of ironic, but it does happen. Laboratory results, processing time doubled. Admission decisions taking longer due to bed management. So, what do you guys think about those particular root causes? I see a D. What else? What do you guys think? B, D, B, D, B. Huh? A reference to their country, 92 wouldn't be so bad. Unfortunately, I understand. Okay. A lot of D's and B's. Okay. Well, if you would go to the next slide, please, Sweta. And yeah, okay. Again, the team chose C, a laboratory bottleneck, creating a cascading delay, double the processing time. Why not the others? The thought was that seasonal flu would show volume increases, and then we said the patient increases where the volume hadn't changed. Emergence electronic health records (EHR) slowdowns affect all departments, not just the ER. Bed management affects patients only, not people in the ER. And yeah, we could argue that. Maybe they sit in the ER because they don't have a bed. Regardless, the team chose C, so that's what you're going to work with. At first, again, we could argue, we could take data. So what would your Lean Six Sigma strategy be for that? Value stream mapping. If it's the lab, we go to the lab and we time the lab. We identify each process. We look at the cycle time. We look at how much waiting is involved. We look at how much over processing. That's one of the wastes, over processing, where somebody simply does too much. You don't need to spend 10 minutes on that. I remember an engineering plant where one guy was taking 2 days to transfer a document to the floor for cut sheets for the laser department. Another guy was taking 2 hours. Obviously, the guy taking 2 days was over processing. So anyway, there's any number of things that could be making these things take longer. We look at that. What's our long-term solution? Lean has a theory of constraints, and basically it says that your slowest process is the bottleneck. You can never move faster than your slowest process. I think that's intuitive to follow that. But yeah, use the theory of constraints to elevate your lab capacity, and there you just go by and you identify the bottleneck process, throw all your resources at it to improve that, get that down on the Pareto, so to speak, so it's not number one, and then you just keep iteratively going through and attacking the highest hitters to reduce that process. So that's a sound strategy. Going into like I said, value stream mapping is the start. You look at inventories, you look at cycle times, and then long-term strategy, working on that bottleneck to improve that throughput. I'm running out of time. Sorry. If you could, the next slide, Sweta. E-commerce return rates surge. So we have an online clothing retailer. Their returns spiked from 18 to 41%, huge, over 6 months. The customer reviews mentioned not as expected and poor fit. And the return reason most cited is size fit issues. So obviously, got an issue with size fits. What was the root cause? Manufacturing quality design due to decline due to a new supplier. Website photos were over edited, creating unrealistic expectations. The size chart standards changed without updating, and competitors offering easier return policies changed. So, team, look at that. What do you guys think? Sorry, I apologize. We're running close on time. Likely C, likely A. Uh, Anybody else? A, C, C, a lot of C's. And again, we could make arguments for any of these, but you have limited resources. So you have to pick the one you think is most likely. And your team came up with, next slide, please. C, inconsistent sizing standards between the products and the descriptions. Absolutely. I run into this. I'm a larger man. I take an XXL depending on where I'm at. So, sometimes 3XLs, sometimes just XLs. So it varies a lot. So we have our silent changes creating systemic mismatches. Why not the others? Quality issues would show damage complaints. Photo editing affects perception, but probably wouldn't dominate the fit at 73%. And competitor policies really wouldn't triple your rates suddenly. And that's all true. So what's our Lean Six Sigma strategy? We want to conduct a process capability analysis. I've talked before about measures of central tendency and the width of a variation that you experience. That is your voice of your process. And we want to compare that to the voice of the customer, what they're expecting. And so we would look at a process capability on sizing and accuracy, determine how we could improve that. SIPOC, we're obviously dealing with suppliers here, so we want to look at those suppliers. What are they doing? If are they giving us confirmation that they're setting to our standard? Do we have a standard? That's the other question. Do we have a sizing standard? You know, a lot of places they use a NIST, National Institute of Standards, and I can't remember the T is for, but anyway, there's a lot of things that are NIST traceable. And our long-term solution there is we want to introduce a poka-yoke. I looked it up yesterday to see how to pronounce it because I hear Pinocchio and poka-yoke. Poka-yoke is air proofing. Great example of that. Your USBs. Um, you can't plug a USB in wrong. The one piece of plastic won't go over the top of the other piece of plastic. So you cannot do it wrong. That's a great example of air proofing. So that's good. So that's what we want to do on that one. And there's one more case. Next slide, please. Loan application processing. Again, these processing delays, these business delays drive me crazy. A regional bank's average loan approval time extends from 5 to 14 business days. That's huge. Customer satisfaction drops 34%. Staff reports frustration with waiting on others, I'll bet, and application volume has been unchanged. So what changed? The credit verification requests requiring multiple follow-ups, underwriters overwhelmed with workload and understaffed, applications missing documentation require back and forth, and sequential approval process creates handoff delays. What do you guys think? Let's think about that for a minute. Yeah, yeah, like I said, that's a common one. Next slide, please. We can see what the yeah. Root cause of D. Absolutely. That handoff thing is huge in every industry. Sequential handoffs. And in matter of fact, in Lean, there's a diagram called the handoff diagram where you track one handoff, two handoff, three handoff, and you'll be amazed at how many different handoffs there are. And each one takes time and each one has a delay. So reducing handoffs reduces delay. So why not the others? The logic was credit verification affects specific applications only. Some people are going to come in there with stellar credit ratings and they don't need that additional stuff. Some understaffing would show consistent backlogs, and they said staffing could remain constant. And missing docs would appear in rejection and incomplete rates, not processing time. And that's true. You're not going to count all of your rework in your processing time. What's our strategy? Again, get in there, look at what's going on, look at our value stream mapping, look at our cycle times, look at our handoffs, see what we can do to improve that. They mentioned Kaizen events. There's a lot of, Kaizen in Japanese is just an improvement. My brother uh, retired from Toyota, and I've known several people from there, and other ones that invented this. A Kaizen is an improvement. So when we talk about a Kaizen event, it's really a management issue where we want to have an improvement, but we know just telling everybody, hey, go do things better isn't as effective as we want it to. So we have a focused time. Maybe it's a week. Usually it's a week, but it depends on how the person that's leading the event wants to do it. And we come in and we focus just that week on making improvements in that process. So it's called a Kaizen event. Sometimes you'll hear it called a Kaizen Blitz. Sometimes you'll hear it called a rapid improvement event. It's all the same thing. It's where we supposedly, I say supposedly because there's usually a phones down, laptop shut rule, but the higher up in the organization people are, they tend to need to take phone calls and that kind of thing. So anyway, we'll have a Kaizen event, identify that, and really value stream mapping marries very well with Kaizen events. So we want to see what's going on with our wait times and our inventories. And our long-term solution is we want to create what's called a cellular manufacturing principle. The ultimate goal of lean is a one-piece flow. It comes in, things are done to it. There's no wait. There's no batch processing where you do 1,000 at a time. It flows all the way through the process. And sometimes that requires you to have a cellular design. So you have create cross-functional teams. They handle and usually this is best achieved by identifying fields. I mentioned some of the higher credit scores, like say everybody over 750 goes through this process and it goes really smoothly. Everybody under 750 to 600 goes through this process, whatever. I'm arbitrarily making up numbers there, but you get the idea. Identifying families and putting them through cells, departments, processes that are designed specifically to address that family of products will probably be the best long-term solution to doing this. And you get that information for how to do that from your value stream mapping that you do in a Kaizen event. And I think that's probably the best answer on that.
Right. Thank you for taking us through the interactive segment. I think it's time to talk about the Lean Six Sigma expert course that we provide. So in the course, there are some of a few benefits that I'm just going to highlight. I'm not going to take much time. I'm just going to take 2 minutes of your time. So this course is not about learning a few tools. It's about building capability that translates into measurable business impact. So first, you're going to earn both Lean Six Sigma Green Belt and Black Belt certifications. And that matters because it signals global credibility. And second, you go deeper into advanced statistical tools like Minitab. And this is where many professionals actually stop, right? They understand concepts, but they don't really analyze real data. So here you're actually building the confidence to interpret patterns, validate improvements, and also make data-backed decisions. And third, you're also going to earn 114 PDUs along with lifetime access to live and on-demand content. This will give you flexibility. So whether you're upskilling while you're working or you're not rushing into learning, you will always have the recordings with you if you want to go back and refer. And finally, the real differentiator. So there will be 13 projects, 12 simulations, and 8 Harvard case studies as a part of this program. And this is not just going to be theory, that's exposure to real world complexities. You're going to learn how to think like a problem solver, not just someone who applies all the theory, right? So you're going to get not just a certification, but we're going to help you with your analytical strengths and also the ability to drive measurable change in any organization that you may get into. And regarding the key highlights of the program, so we have Simplilearn's job assist, which will help you noticed by companies and get more opportunities. You're going to learn from industry experts like Rex, and you're going to have great insights and sessions with a lot of really credible mentors. You're going to have exclusive GenAI modules for quality management, and you will also additionally have 40 hours of live instructor-led training and 15 plus hours of self-paced course as a part of this course that we are providing. Additionally, you will also have hands-on experience, like I mentioned, with 13 real-world projects and 12 simulation exams. And finally, I think I covered this in the previous slide, and this is accredited to globally recognized IASSC as well. So I would like to call on Rex to basically explain the learning path very briefly to our participants, so they just get an idea of what they can expect as a part of the course.
Sure. You start with the green belt certification. That gives you the overview of all the tools, the overview of the DMAIC. And the idea is if you look at various certification bodies, they'll have a taxonomy which says able to repeat it, able to understand it. the highest is able to take what they've learned and apply it to other things. So at the green belt, we're really just getting for familiarity with the projects and the tools and the ability to understand and work with others. Minitab, that's a specialized stat program. I've been using it for 20 plus years. I've used all of the stat programs that I know of, and Minitab is the best. No, I don't get commission off of it for saying that, but they are the professional standard. It's a fantastic tool, and it will definitely help you and make your life easier. And it's not that expensive. Your company should be able to you can be able to cost justify getting a license of that pretty easily. We move from, and that's kind of a transitional step. You're doing the Minitab in the green belt, and you're doing Minitab in the black belt. You just develop mastery of it. So in black belt, you are taking what you learned in green belt and you're applying that leadership and that project management. I mentioned, there's politics. There's ways to set up your different charters and things like that 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 are going to be able to get more traction with your upper leadership. So you learn that leadership and also how to coach other people. Your green belts, they're typically, if you have a black belt and a green belt, the green belt's looking to the black belt to be a manager, a mentor. And then they have the Harvard Business Publishing case studies for Lean Six Sigma. Those are real world. They're backed obviously by Harvard. And so they give you real world applications and examples for how to do these. So it's very structured and it's very, very good for you to move progressively from one to the other.
Right. So thank you for taking us through the curriculum and explaining what is covered as a part of this course. So we just wanted to show you the certificate that you will be receiving at the end of this course. So this is a Lean Six Sigma expert certificate from Simplilearn, and you will also enjoy lifetime access to self-paced learning materials, like I mentioned previously. And I see a few questions about the program fees. So this consider this as an investment. So the program fees is 26,700 rupees, and you also have the option to pay this in installments if you're interested. This QR code will take you to the course page, so you can check out more details there. You can also explore our courses if interested, and we are very confident about the kind of course that we provide and the kind of trainers that we have as a part of our learning journey. So in case any of you is interested in joining the course or would like more details about this, I will quickly launch a poll. You can click on a yes, and our team will reach out to you at the earliest. So please go ahead and give us your responses in the poll. I hope the poll is visible to everyone. And in the meantime, I also want to address the fact that I see a few names in the chat. So I will launch another poll right after the interest poll. What you can do is fill up your full name in that poll for you to receive the certificate. So if you are sharing your names in the chat, this chat is not recorded. So we will not be able to send out the certificates to all of you. So please go ahead. And if you have any questions also, I think this is the time you can ask your questions to Rex, and he will be more than happy to answer any of the questions that you may have. You can post them in the Q&A box if it's specific to anything. Please don't share it in the chat. So if you have any questions, please take this time to go ahead and give us your questions. Let me just see if there are any questions that we have not addressed so far. So there's a question about how Lean Six Sigma could help the publishing industry. Rex, could you briefly talk about that as well while they fill up the poll?
Yes, I had one student. He was a museum curator, uh, and yes, it's a little different, but I am 100% sure in the publishing industry, you have processes. Everything is a process. There's an input, there's a something that goes on, that's the process, and then you have an output. If your publishing industry has that kind of a setup, and I know it does, then you're going to be able to use DMAIC and Lean to maximize those processes. The mere fact that you're here, you have some interest in improving them. So yes, absolutely, we can help you specialize or look at your specific problems. In his case, it was about how to maintain the books, how to do various things, how to keep them aging. All those things are fantastic. There's data associated with them, so I'm 100% sure. I don't know enough about the publishing industry, but I do know you have processes, and that's the key. If you have processes, we can break them down and then look at them and apply those lean and those Six Sigma processes to your processes and help you improve what it is that you're looking for improvement on.
Right. So thank you for that answer. I see a few people ask the QR code. So we will be sharing the deck with all of you by tomorrow. So you can definitely scan the QR code, or you can just go to our website and search for Lean Six Sigma Expert. Right. So with that, I'm gonna quickly close this interest poll. And if you guys still are interested and you did not get an opportunity to respond to the poll, you can definitely go to our website, and there's an option to talk to our advisor. So the moment a lot of people have been waiting for, and this is the certificate poll. I'm going to quickly launch this poll as well. All you have to do is fill up your full name, and you will be receiving your certificates, the recording, and the slide deck within 48 working hours. I see a lot of messages in the email saying that you've not received it. So I request all of you to wait for 48 hours. And if you don't receive it by then, definitely please reach out to us. And for anyone joining us from LinkedIn or YouTube, and you have stayed till the end of the webinar, you can mail us at webinars@simplilearn.net, and our team will share the certificates with all of you as well. And if there are any participants for whom the poll is not visible, again, you guys can also reach out to webinars@simplilearn.net, and our team will be more than happy to share the certificates with you. And with that, I think we are coming to the end of the webinar. So as you guys are giving your responses, I would also like to take this time to thank Rex for such a wonderful session. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm sure all the participants also greatly benefited from all the insights and all the tips that you shared. It was a wonderful session. So thank you for joining us. It was great having you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. This is my passion. This is what I like to do.
Right. That's great to know. And I think there's a question I always ask our speakers. So before we wrap up, Rex, what is one piece of advice you would like to leave with our audience? We have a lot of them saying back towards the end of the webinar. So your advice would be great.
I think whenever I inherited a guy years ago as a quality engineer after a restructuring. And so I asked him about his Excel skills, and he said, I've never used it. I was shocked. I was like, really? It's the year 20, whatever it was, and you don't know how to use Excel, and you're supposed to be a quality engineer. But he had the desire. So I think when I look for people on teams and people that I want to work with, I'm looking for desire. Yes, if they have excellent skills, that's going to be a big factor. But I think desire is more important than anything. If you want to learn, if you want to apply, if you're like me and you have a passion for these tools and for this improvement, that is the number one thing you can have. And taking classes like this Simplilearn class really builds your expertise. It's going to fire your passion. It's going to enable you to show others your passion in something demonstrable where you can say, hey, look, I tangibly did this. And I think that's the other piece of it is that desire. I mean, yes, everyone wants a college degree or some kind of certificate, but what you really want is that expertise and that ability to make real changes. That's what will get you noticed, and that's what will get you your promotions and your good ratings and things like that. But you do need a certificate to get your foot in the door, but then it's up to you with your desire and your application. So I think that's my biggest takeaway that I always tell people. It's, you've got to have the desire and you've got to really apply yourself. That's how education works. You get out of it what you put into it.
Right. Thank you for that wonderful piece of advice. And I hope all of you also take away this message from today's webinar and apply it in your lives. With that, I'm also going to end the poll. Like I mentioned, if you have not responded, you can mail us at webinars@simplilearn.net. And with that, I would also like to thank each and every one of you for staying back, for being such a wonderful audience. It was a really interactive session, and I loved hosting you guys. I would really like to see you all in the upcoming webinars as well. So once again, thank you everyone, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day ahead. See you all soon in the upcoming webinars.